The Grand Conclave of the Trisector Alliance convened in the obsidian amphitheater of Xylos Prime, a neutral moon orbiting a dying star. Delegates from over 200 species filled the tiered galleries: crystalline Vexari, methane-breathing Cathor, gelatinous myceloids, each draped in ceremonial regalia, their translators humming softly in the low-gravity air. At the center of the chamber stood the human delegation, 3 figures in simple gray uniforms, dwarfed by the alien grandeur around them. Among them was Commander Ilara Voss, Earth's youngest ever envoy to the Galactic Concord. At 32, she carried the weight of a species still considered newcomers in the Galactic Order. Barely 50 years since humanity had cracked FTL. Barely 30 since they'd been granted observer status. To most of the Conclave, humans were loud, emotional, and dangerously unpredictable. To High Arbiter Zorvak of the Draken hegemony, they were little more than clever primates playing at diplomacy. Zorvak loomed over Ilara as she concluded her plea for humanitarian aid to the war-torn colony of Epsilon 9. His obsidian scales gleamed under the chamber's bioluminescent lights, and his 4 eyes narrowed with contempt. "Your species whines like hatchlings," he rumbled, voice amplified by his thoracic resonator. "You beg for resources while your ships trespass in hegemony-claimed sectors. You lack discipline. You lack honor." Ilara kept her voice steady. "We seek only to protect civilians, Arbiter. The refugees on Epsilon 9 are not soldiers, they are teachers, farmers, children." Zorvak snorted, a plume of sulfurous vapor curling from his nostrils. "Sentimentality is weakness, and weakness invites conquest." Then, without warning, he lashed out, a backhanded strike with his clawed forearm that sent Ilara crashing to the polished floor. The slap echoed through the silent chamber like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled through the galleries. No one moved. To strike a diplomat, even a human, was a breach of the oldest conclave laws. But Zorvak merely straightened, his chest swelling with pride. "Let this be a lesson," he declared. "Know your place, Simeon." Ilara rose slowly, blood trickling from her split lip. Her eyes burned, not with tears, but with cold, focused fury. She said nothing. She simply turned and walked out, her delegation following in stunned silence. That night, aboard the UNS Horizon, Ilara didn't weep. She worked. While the galaxy assumed humanity would file a formal complaint or worse, retreat in shame, Ilara activated Protocol Chimera, a contingency buried deep in Earth's defense archives. It wasn't a weapon. It was an idea. 3 days later, she returned to the Conclave, not as a supplicant, but as a harbinger. She stood before the assembled delegates, her uniform crisp, her face healed but her gaze sharper than ever. Behind her floated a holographic projection, a star map pulsing with crimson markers. "High Arbiter Zorvak," she began, voice calm. "You believe strength lies in claws and conquest, but humanity has learned that true power lies in connection." She tapped her wrist comm. The star map zoomed in on the Draken hegemony's core worlds. Dozens of crimson markers blinked to life, not on military installations but on orbital foundries, data relays, and quantum entanglement hubs. "These are the 47 critical infrastructure nodes that keep your empire functioning," Ilara said. "Each one is now compromised." Zorvak laughed a guttural roar. "Impossible. Our firewalls are woven from neutronium-grade encryption." "Not firewalls," Ilara replied. "People," she gestured again. The projection shifted to show footage. Draken engineers, technicians, even mid-level bureaucrats working quietly, inserting tiny data crystals into server ports, rerouting coolant lines, disabling failsafes, all of them wearing discrete human-made neural dampeners that masked their actions from hegemony surveillance. "You see," Ilara continued, "while your empire glorifies hierarchy and obedience, humanity spent centuries mastering something you dismissed as weakness, empathy. We listened. We learned. We built trust. Over the past decade, Earth's cultural attachés, medics, and engineers had embedded themselves across neutral and allied systems, even in hegemony border colonies under humanitarian pretexts. They didn't preach. They healed. They taught. They shared. And in doing so, they found allies. Drakens who questioned their empire's cruelty, who dreamed of a different future." Zorvak's scales paled. "You infiltrated my empire. With kindness." "With respect," Ilara corrected. And now every one of those 47 nodes is wired to a single command. One word from me, and your entire communications grid collapses. Your fleet coordination fails. Your supply chains freeze. Your people go dark. The chamber fell utterly silent. Even the ever-chattering myceloids stilled their pulsing membranes. You wouldn't dare, Zorvac hissed. It would trigger war. No, Alara said softly. It would end one. She turned to the conclave. The Draken hegemony has annexed 17 sovereign systems in the last cycle. Enslaved millions. Burned worlds that refused tribute. All in the name of order. She paused. Humanity offers a choice. Stand down, withdraw from occupied territories, and release all political prisoners or lose everything you've built in an hour. Zorvac lunged, roaring, but Vexari peacekeepers intercepted him with stasis fields. The High Arbiter writhed, humiliated not by a slap, but by the terrifying realization that his empire, built on fear, had been unraveled by compassion. The vote was unanimous. Within a week, the hegemony ceded control of 12 systems. Within a month, freed colonies formed the Coalition of Free Worlds, with Earth as its first non-voting advisor, a position Alara accepted with quiet humility. But the true shift came months later, when a Draken defector, a former engineer from Xylos Prime, walked into a human embassy on Nova Terra. She carried a data slate containing schematics for a new kind of reactor. Clean, efficient, and shareable. I was one of the ones who helped you, she said through a translator. I thought I was betraying my people, but you gave us a way to be better, Alara smiled. We didn't give you anything. You chose it. Back on Earth, historians would later call it the Silent Reckoning, the moment humanity proved that the most revolutionary weapon wasn't a bomb or a beam, but the unwavering belief in the dignity of others. And as for Zorvac? Stripped of his title, exiled to a remote moon, he spent his days watching human broadcasts, educational programs, music festivals, disaster relief efforts. One evening, he saw footage of Ilara Voss kneeling in the mud of a flood-ravaged village handing a ration pack to a child. The child hugged her. For the first time in his life, the former High Arbiter felt something unfamiliar. Shame. And awe. He never understood humans. But he would spend the rest of his life trying, because sometimes the hardest strikes aren't delivered with fists, but with grace. And humanity? Humanity struck back harder than anyone imagined.